Okay.
Okay, let's call the General Purposes Committee meeting to order. Before I ask for a motion on the minutes, Councillor Hobbs is coming in remotely. May I have a motion to allow him? So that's moved. Is it seconded? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Motion on the minutes. All those in favor, opposed, carried. We have one delegation, Nancy Small, CEO, and others from Tourism Richmond, et cetera, on the interpretive walking experience, Fisher's Walk. Please come forward. And as you know, we appropriate 5 minutes for the delegations.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, City staff. As you said, I'm Nancy Swan, the CEO of Tourism Richmond, and joining me today is Carrie Chong, Director of Industry and Destination Development. Together, we are excited to share a project with you that we've been working on for a while, and I thank you very much for the opportunity to address you. We believe this project is one that will create excitement and interest and enhance and add to the already incredible experience in the jewel of Richmond's crown, Steveston. Tourism Richmond is committed to marketing Richmond and our unique cultural heritage, incredible culinary scene, and unparalleled hospitality. Our mission is to ensure Richmond and our community benefit from a thriving visitor economy. We also work within the community to create new experiences and give visitors and locals new reasons for a visit. Fisher's Walk is just that. The interpretive walking experience creates the opportunity to engage with the fishing industry, learn about it, and appreciate it. And appreciate the people who work in it. It creates the opportunity to showcase an important part of our community, an important industry. Our collaboration with Jamie and the team at the Steveston Harbour Authority has given us much insight into how the industry works today and gave us so much excitement as we have crafted the stories and created the visuals that you'll see. So why Fisher's Walk? Why are we doing this? Ultimately, it's another tool in our toolbox of experiences and things to do in Richmond. We want to give people additional reasons to come to Steveston, interact with the community, and spend more time in our community and engage with things in a little bit of a different way. We spent a lot of time in the early stage of this project working with Jamie and the team at the Steveston Harbour Authority, her board, and the community of fishers in Steveston to uncover the stories and the details of the industry today and the future. Clearly, the Gulf of Georgia Cannery and Britannia shipyards are very focused and very effective at telling the stories of the past, how Steveston and the fishing industry shaped the community. Today's story, what we want to tell, is the focus of Fisher's Walk. It's complex, and we needed to boil it down to a few directions to ensure the product and the experience we're creating is relevant, engrossing, and engaging. The theme we've landed on is Ocean's Bounty. And as we engaged and chatted with key leaders in the fishing industry, there were some themes, as I said, that rose to the top. And this was the one that, through conversation and lots of discussion and research, that we landed on. It's very exciting, very multidimensional, and gives the ability to tell many different types of stories. Here are some inspirational images that we pulled together to show directionally what we want this to look like and how we will and how we will hang together the theme. And you can see that there's a lot of numbers there, and the concept that we came up with from a visual and creative standpoint is called fishing by numbers. Here's the map of the walk. It's about 1.5 kilometers from the start of Fisherman's Wharf to the start of Garry Point Park. And discovery along different points of the walk is really the name of the game. And as you'll see, it's mixed. It's a mix of different things, part public art, part signage, and part experiential. And these interpretive panels here along the wharf, our approach to the graphic is bold, bright, exciting. And here you can see some close-up view of the signs with very robust content, interesting facts and figures that we think will really engage walkers as they're walking along and as we're moving them along through to Garry Point. Our idea is to bring to the ground as well and move people along from Fisherman's Wharf, literally on the ground, as you've probably seen in other cities that you've been to, and literally leading people out to Garry Point, because sometimes people wouldn't necessarily know to walk down this particular section of Fisher's Walk unless there was something leading them down there. We want this to be very engaging and immersive, and we'll bring some creative elements to the forefront, such as bold graphics, numbers, again, that tell the story of the fishing industry as part of the creative execution. Just some examples of what the visual, we did this photography just a couple of months ago as part of the project. You can see the numbers are a very important part of the engaging elements, and this is all being fact-checked by Fisher's and Jamie's team, actually, at the Steveston Harbor Authority. Another example of how we could use an engaging sign, we want this to be, yes, absolutely a photo walk, but a placemaking, a grounding piece so that people understand where they are and how important the fishing industry is to the community. This is the Cantrall building, and the idea is that we would actually have a net, an actual net, repurposed net, that we would hang from the top. And again, being a three-dimensional, very engaging element that we would have as part of the walk through to Garry Point. So the timeline, as we are right now, and just to put us back to reality, we've gone through a very long community research, outreach, dialogue to get to this point. And we really wanted to show you these concepts, to hear your feedback, and to engage and inform. And the idea is that we would hopefully be able to be in a position to bring this to life and install in the spring. Late spring, probably April 2025. And I also wanted to share that this is phase one of what we hope will be another continuation, phase two being once we get phase one done. This is the groundwork. This is what's going to lay the foundation for additional elements, which could be more interactive, could be more digital, could be more augmented reality. But for now, we really wanted to focus on laying the groundwork and creating the look and the feel of what this particular project is. That's it. And Carrie and I would be very happy to take any questions or hear any comments.
Thanks. The only question that occurs to me is, could you provide us with a copy of those slides?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah,
So we
for
can
sure.
just
Absolutely.
reflect a little more on them and
Yes.
get back to you with any questions.
Yeah, there's a lot in there, so yeah, no, for sure. We'll definitely provide that, yeah.
All right. Councillor Wolf.
Thanks. Just a question. Has it at all been linked with the city's wayfinding strategy, or elements like that, or completely separate technique of wayfinding?
I would say linked in a certain way, but prior to the wayfinding strategy. And the way that we see this is there is signage, there is wayfinding involved, but it really is more about experiential. And it is more, I would say it's more public art actually than wayfinding is what the intent would be. There has to be some elements of wayfinding though, you're right, in order to move people along.
Yeah, thank you. It's been so exciting being part of this project. And from the very beginning, when Howard drew that boat on a napkin, it's just insane. So what my question is, so people are in Steveston, they're all about seeing it, but what about signage outside of Steveston? For instance, Highway 99, this way to Fisherman's Walk or something like that.
Do you have contacts with the Ministry of Transport? That would be fantastic. Yes, I think at some point we will get to that. The focus right now for us is actually getting the groundwork literally out and there, and then how we connect this particular experience with other things within our community and even outside of the community, still to be determined. But I think that's a really good point, and I appreciate you bringing that up because it's important to link those things and how we can actually bring more people into the community.
Perfect. Well, when it's ready to go, then we'll lobby for you.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, good. Thanks for coming forward with this. Is there you mentioned that it's primarily public art. Is there a historical component to this to tie it together? Obviously, if you're putting something out, why wouldn't you do everything?
Yeah, it's a really good question, something we grappled with actually, to be honest, over the last couple of years as we've been working through what the content will be. What we decided on collectively as a group with engagement with many of the people within the fishing community is that let Britannia Shipyard, let the Gulf of Georgia Cannery really tell the story about the history and the importance of how that built a community within Steveston. And that this would be focusing on the here and now and into the future and the sustainability, the importance of the fishing industry to our current community. So I think they will actually be we hope that they will be very complementary with each other.
Okay, just throw a point out. I hope you will be able to highlight the berth for the Motor Princess that serves Steveston and Victoria when we had our own ferry here in Steveston at the foot of 6th Avenue, because you're walking right by it. I just leave that with you.
Okay, thank you very much. Duly noted.
Okay, well, thank you very much for telling us about this exciting
Great.
proposal. If you get us a copy of the slides.
Will do.
And keep us posted.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, so that brings us to the business regulation bylaw. Mark, is there anything to add to your report?
To your worship, I have nothing further to add, and I'm open to questions.
All right, any, Counselor Day?
Brody, Jarvinis states in the report has no history in Richmond. That's on page 8. What about other cities?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, I can get back to you on that.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Okay, so it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. The interim housing needs report for 2024, Greg Newman. Do you want to give us just a nutshell version in
Yes, sure, through your worship.
2 minutes or less?
Yeah, so earlier this year, I guess even closer, there was announcement by the province that all municipalities are to undertake an interim housing needs report that would acknowledge the 5 and 20-year housing needs required to address housing demand. The one thing I would say that is different in this current iteration of the provincial requirement is that we look at growth-driven housing need in addition to latent needs. So when the city did the 2021 housing needs report, it was largely focused on growth-driven housing need. But in this new provincial requirement, we're acknowledging latent housing needs. We're looking at the housing supply that's required to address low levels of rental vacancy, housing supply to address what's called suppressed household formation. So that might be a situation where an adult child is living with their parents. They'd like to move out. There's not a home on the market that would suit their needs. And then we also have housing for homeless. And then the last sort of new component of housing need is what they call demand buffer. So it's a top up to all those other components of housing need to sort of inflate and provide for housing choice.
All right, someone want to move it? Moved and seconded. We'll get to questions, don't worry.
What's the rush?
No more rush than usual. Counselor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. So on page 13, the report states that that we need 1,800 housing units annually to address the anticipated demand to 2026. But on page 14, the province thinks we need 2,600. Do you have any comment about that?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, I guess as I mentioned in the intro remarks there, that there's the sort of the growth-driven need, and then there's this need to address latent demand. I think the opinion of staff is there are issues with what they call the HNR, the Housing Needs Report method by the province, where we feel at the staff level that it may be overestimating need.
And that's what I was thinking as well, as I've looked at the other reports from Metro Vancouver, and they're more in line with what you guys are saying. My next question is on page 49. It shows the fastest growing group of households is 2-person. And then on GP 50, right next to it, it says that 47% of new builds are either studio or 1-bedroom. It seems out of sync that maybe we should be having far, far more 2-bedrooms and 3-bedrooms. So like, you can see there's just, I mean, we're really not building for what we need. And I'm just wondering what, maybe we need a policy to stop building so many, 47% studios or one bedroom. That's almost half of what we're building. Perfect for investors, but maybe not perfect for people who want to live in them. So any thoughts about that?
Through your worship, to Councillor Day, Figure 9 on page 49 is speaking to what we've seen as the rates of growth. So we are seeing higher amounts of growth in one-person and two-person.
Yeah.
That's one-person and two-person households. So a two-person household may be comfortable living in a one-bedroom unit. The only other thing I would add is certainly can look at whether or not we need to build more 2s and 3s. The city has done a good job with its family-friendly housing policy, so we are realizing a higher supply of 2 and 3 bedroom units.
Higher than we had before, for sure.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, but as more young families are forced to live in apartments, I think we need to really, really push the 2 and 3 bedroom family friendly. So, thank you.
Councilor McNulty?
Yeah, thanks very much for this detailed report. I have a question. I noticed, maybe I missed it in the report, you didn't, even though they're not our accomplishments, you didn't put the 836 units that are under Metro Vancouver that are in our community. I would add that to our thing. We're looking after, we provided the property many years ago, and we allowed Minetta Village and the co-ops to go on and on it. But so that's a positive for us. Even though we don't control it, it still exists in our community. I guess my question through the mayor to you, you're doing all this work, which is great. 35,000 to 50,000 people are coming into the Lower Mainland, okay, every year. You'll never get a number. So what is the province going to do when you come up with all the information? And what are they going to contribute to us to help us out? I mean, you're doing there, we should be billing them actually for your work. And every other community should be doing the same thing. So I guess my question is, okay, you're doing a great job, don't get me wrong. What are they going to do about it? They can give us some money? Are they going to help us get some more lemur? Are they going to, they already gave us Bill 44 to 47. I mean, got to thank them very much for those things. We appreciate that, you know. It screwed up the whole damn system on it. So anyhow, it's a facetious question to you. I don't expect an answer, but my question, your worship, is what at the end of the day are we going to have when we have all this data? And it's good data, don't get it, okay? And I'd like to know with your contacts, whoever's you're dealing with at the provincial level, what are each community getting out of it? And I just leave it at that.
Do you have any input on that question at this point, or just want to leave it?
I didn't expect it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Galanders.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. To staff, this is good work. Thanks for putting this all together and explaining everything. One thing that comes up, you know, over and over again throughout the report is rental housing, rental housing, rental housing. That, you know, 23,000 of our households rent compared to 57,000 that own. But we only have, you know, 3,000 or so purpose-built rental units, so it's coming from secondary suites, and the need to build more rental housing, and that we have to pre-zone lands in order to meet our needs over the next 20 years, it says in the report. So I'm going to assume, but I just want confirmation that some ideas that we had discussed being possible for the OCP review were things like, you know, purpose-built rental pre-zoning over commercial buildings, for example, around hubs around the city. So is that going to come back by this deadline as far as having lands pre-zoned for rental only so that we're going to be able to build to meet these needs?
Through your worship to Councillor Glanders, the requirement coming out of this is that the zoning and the official plan have to enable the overall supply of housing as identified in this. So OCP has to pre-designate lands, zoning has to pre-zone lands to deliver 52,000 units roughly. With SHMU and with pre-zoning around TOA, transit-oriented areas, we've already delivered or enabled the delivery of over 52,000. On the market rental housing piece, there is an opportunity to use inclusionary zoning around, say, our SkyTrain stations to require the supply of market rental housing in addition to below market or affordable housing.
Yeah, so but beyond the inclusionary zoning, are we going to be looking at pre-zoning for rental only in some areas? And do we need a resolution to make sure that's going to be part of it?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Glanders, I think the response to that is as part of the OCP review that's undergoing. So this housing needs report will feed into the OCP review as far as how much housing we need to enable through pre-zoning. And certainly one of the tools is to look at pre-zoning, especially for rental. We're certainly aware of past referrals on rental over commercial and looking at opportunities where we can pre-zone, like I say, primarily for rental or below market rental. So it is under review.
Yeah, that's good, because I know that's what the developers want. In order to be able to build it, they want it to just be done, pre-zoned, that they can put up a big rental building there and not have to put in a rezoning application and everything else. So that's good. And then just one more question. I find, so on GP 14, when it says the housing needs that we have per type of housing. So for example, the person's experiencing homelessness, right? So 46 units per year. So this is what our need is. How does that get done? Like, we can't even get a 90-unit building approved in the city. So, like, we're putting this forward and then it's got to be province-driven based on our need, or it's going to come from us?
Through your worship, I think this ties in with what Councillor McNulty was saying. One of the messages we're trying to convey here is that it relies on involvement from all levels of government, and I think the delivery of housing for those who are homeless requires considerable amounts of investment and subsidy, and the city can't be expected to do it alone. So I think we will have to rely on partnerships with the province and the federal government.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll kind of start off at that same point. There was nowhere in the report where you mentioned the great work the city's done to accumulate the properties at Sexsmith to provide this housing. And now we're being told that there's a number that we're supposed to be building, yet we're prevented from building it up to this point. So is there a reason why you didn't include the Sexsmith example in here?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, no, there's no particular reason.
Okay. Looking at the graph on our page 16, the 1980 units, and then on top of that, the 620 in addition, did we have breakdown of what the city and Metro Vancouver thought should be in that 1980? Like, did we think there should be 46 units for people experiencing homelessness? Did we think there should be the other two numbers, the 299 for extreme core housing need? Like, did we have matching ballpark figures for those additional three categories?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, no, we didn't. The 1980 reflects what we've seen delivered, but we haven't broken that down, and we could tease that out a bit more to see kind of what those underlying components are, but that wasn't part of the data that we have.
Okay, because I thought that was one of the positive takeaways from this, was that maybe they did some of the work for us, so we can kind of verify it and perhaps go ahead with that when we're allowed to build it. Thanks.
First off, thank you for the report, and I agree with the comments being made by staff on the projected number provided by the province. But I have a question about the BC Housing Registry on GP 55, the bottom two paragraphs. You mentioned that the BC Subsidized Housing Registry is not a wait list. And, you know, someone applies, they are offered housing based on the need rather than based on the time since registering. I think this has caused a lot of confusion in the community. People, they felt that they register with the BC Housing and then they could, you know, just waiting to be given a place in the future. So how is it operating right now? And by what measures do they assign or you determine who should get what and when? And for people who have been on the waiting list or on the list for many years, how do they renew or, review or reassess. I met some people telling me that they have been registered for 7 years and not hearing anything. So do you have any kind of feedback, or information that you can provide?
Through your worship to Councillor Rao, I don't have an answer for you other than, to your point, people register to be on the list to access subsidized or supportive housing. And BC Housing does an assessment based on need. So it may be that people that registered 3 years ago have a lesser need than others that have registered more recently.
But how often do they review or reassess the needs? Because there are always new people coming in, so are the ones who did not get it from the beginning would just be pushed back, and new applicants would be assessed first and offer anything first? So, I mean, I don't know, maybe you don't have the answer, but can we get some more information?
Can you get more information and let us know?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Okay, Councillor Glanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one more follow-up question with what I was asking before about the units per persons experiencing homelessness. I compared it to trying to build the 90-unit supportive housing, but is this also supposed to be including shelter beds, like to suggest? Because I know that we did include some numbers of our, on what units we have provided in this category. It included the Salvation Army beds and the temporary winter shelter beds. So does that mean that we need 46 more shelter beds per year for the next 5 years? Like, or is it housing for people to move out of shelter into?
Through your worship to Councillor Glanders, it's new homes.
New
So
homes.
new units, not shelter beds.
And how is it different from, say, someone who needed a lemur unit versus this person's experiencing homelessness unit? Like, I don't know if we have a category for that.
Through your worship to Councillor Glanders, I'd have to think it's based on the ability to pay.
Okay, let's call the question then on the resolution. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Now, establishing a housing authority to referral response. Peter?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Well, could you start us off by, I mean, we talk about this new structure and the viability of it and the need for it. Could you just outline what we've already got? You've got a housing office. You're the director, as I understand. So can you just give us a few comments on that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, what you state is correct. The housing office was established this year. The city was broadly providing housing services. The assembly, if you will, of staff and then new staff that have come in with external funding from the CMHC allowed an expansion of resources to focus on essentially expanding the scope and delivery of housing in the city.
All right, so how many people are in the department?
Currently, we have 8, and then 2 were supported in the 2025 budget as temporary.
Okay, and so what are the general thrusts of what you're doing?
So currently, our main areas of focus have been working with developers on approval of lemur units, and we work with DevApps on development applications team on rental units as well. And we support the delivery of the actual build projects in partnership with BC Housing and other such entities, the nonprofit sector working with them. So in that case, we're offering usually through the housing reserve, affordable housing reserve. We're paying for their DCCs, for instance, and managing some of those functions to get the project approved.
So as I understand it, the bottom line of what you're saying is that we don't, in your opinion, need a housing authority generally to cover all things and as a continuing body, but there could be projects that could well warrant such an approach.
Correct, yes. In the report, there's a table that compares the city's in-house department. And I failed to note that in the provincial legislature, they do note in-house departments as a best practice as well. Vancouver's come to the same conclusion. But that table does compare and contrast the housing authority with in-house department. And you don't see a lot of space between what they can do. They're more or less providing the same functions in different means. The report does identify a few areas where it might trigger or be beneficial to establish a corporation.
Yeah. Okay, so we got some questions. Councillor Heed.
Yes, I have a few questions for clarification. Given the fact that we just discussed the interim housing needs report and what we need to ensure that we have housing here in Richmond, and on page 76, you start out saying that we've been an active leader in supporting direct delivery of housing across the full housing continuum. You know, again, that's based on some type of data. I don't necessarily agree fully with that statement. I think we've made progress in particular areas, but as identified earlier, there's still other areas that we definitely have to. And then you say at the bottom in the last paragraph, the city has long maintained in-house function to achieve affordable housing outcomes. Well, we're still in a bit of a dire state right now with our affordable housing outcomes, so I'm a little concerned about that. And I'll give you an opportunity, Mr. Russell, in a second here. Just let me finish and get them all out. You certainly assert that if we maintain an in-house function, it's more flexible and it avoids some legal aspects of forming a housing authority. You know, again, that all can be worked out. And you mentioned you're comparing in-house department and housing authority, and you know, this is my just personal opinion. Please don't take this the wrong way. I think it's more slanted towards an in-house department versus some of the successes that I have had an ability to look at based on the housing authorities. So, and I'll just, you know, finish off with, and I think you say this in your very last sentence in this, in your council report: a housing authority or any such similar arm's length entity remains an important tool that the city may pursue to achieve its objectives. I gotta believe our objectives are that we need something to certainly perpetuate the success we've had going forward. What that tool is may be a housing authority. So, you know, I certainly do appreciate that part of it. But we've been, Mayor, we've been talking about this for almost 2 years when Councillor Glanders brought up this particular issue. We've gone back and forth, and I recall 4 discussions that have taken place with respect to us looking at some entity, whether it's a corporate entity or some other type of entity in Richmond. I strongly believe that we need to look at this. I'm not sure what the structure will actually look at the end of the day, but I think in order for us to meet what we need as far as housing in Richmond, we are going to have we need some type of entity in order to accomplish that. So I said quite a few things, so I just want to give Mr. Russell an opportunity to respond to some of that.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, absolutely. The staff are very open to looking at housing authority in the right context. So currently we're providing a number of excellent services and supporting the delivery of affordable housing. The incorporation of a new entity may be beneficial as we move ahead and look to expand our role. There might be other entities as well. The report highlights a number of different ways in which it can be achieved. Some of the case studies reveal the same content. So as we're getting into startup mode, if you will, for the housing office, as well as implementing the items on GP 79, which relate to the housing bills, the housing accelerator funding requirements we have. And also, I just highlight the building of the capacity of the nonprofit operators who operate the Lemur units, for instance. These are current activities keeping us very busy, if you will. But while we're doing this work, we're very open to the concept of a housing authority should it meet a certain objective we're trying to achieve.
Thank you.
Just before we go to Councillor McNulty, is a project like Sexsmith and Cambie, and forget all the politics and all that stuff, is that size of project a possibility for this kind of an approach? Would that be an example, maybe?
I assume you're referring to the Housing Authority establish, a building of this nature?
Yeah.
Yes, it would be, with the right financing and partnerships, it could be delivered. Not so, I wouldn't suggest the supportive site if you're referring to that location. I think the level of the operational requirements would be excessive in terms of cost. So you really do need partners like BC Housing and the nonprofit operators to take on that burden and subsidize the buildings in some cases. There's other sites where we could look at different options that would probably, what's found in the Burnaby case study, providing, say, low-end market rental units, maybe at a deeper subsidy level. But it would, to actually make a viable building, would require ownership or market rental components up to potentially 85%. So it would be similar to what the private sector is already delivering.
Your Worship, maybe I'll just add to that as well if I could, thanks. Yeah, I think, as Mr. Russell's indicated, we're absolutely open to a housing authority. I think what we've seen from the cases we've looked at in the region and elsewhere is that they're most successful when you have a concrete deliverable defined, and typically that is financing, building, owning, and operating housing. So in the absence of having the resources to do that, then it becomes more difficult to argue that the housing authority is your best option. But once you do that, if you and in the case of Burnaby, they have a situation where they've committed $100 million to their housing authority to start such a project. And then when that entity is owning a building that's providing affordable housing, they're managing the tenants, they're managing that relationship. All of that, the housing authority provides a quality space for that to be managed in an effective way if that's not something you want to do in-house. Now, as Mr. Russell's indicated, of course, Vancouver does a lot of that, and they've chosen to do it in-house without a housing authority. So there's certainly pros and cons. But really, that's the thing. And certainly we're doing lots of work. We're going to be coming back to council this year with the updated housing strategy to look at a whole host of things that we're exploring now. And if it gets to the point where we can find some key support perhaps from other levels of government to the tune of large dollars that will allow you to build housing in the same way BC Housing does or something like that, then yes, I think there starts to be a strong argument for a housing authority.
Okay, Councillor McNulty.
I'm confused on this. I can figure out why with all that, through you to staff. Given in the report, what happened, you say you're working with developers, et cetera. What happened to the application of our policies on getting certain parts of housing when we had it with the planning department? It's 15% for affordable housing. It's automatic across the board. How are you working with the developers as opposed to Mary Jane up in the planning department that says to the developer, you want to develop here, it's 15%. You want to develop in the city center, you have the city center application. We already have the policy. Has that gone away?
Through the chair to council, we know the policies still apply. There's no change in policy. Currently, for developments in the city center, for example, it's 15% Lemur and 15%.
But you're doing that negotiation, and the planner's not saying this is a policy and do your planning accordingly.
We work as a team.
Well, okay, I have a little concern about that. Do we have a Richmond list? Are we accumulating a Richmond list? Because I do know how the list for the Lower Mainland is dealt with. And I think we all know, and let's not hide, okay? People from Prince George, Cranbrook, and everybody else are on it, and I don't know where the Richmond people are, and they won't tell us, okay? And I don't know any Richmond people that have got onto it to a unit at Kingston Gardens in Surrey or wherever, and it isn't working. it may be working for people elsewhere outside, but it's not working for Richmond people. And I think we've got to look at ours. We, in my opinion, Your Worship, have to say to developers, we want Richmond people to get first go at it. Our RCMP officers, our first responders, et cetera, our low income, our seniors, et cetera, they have first kick at it. And if they can't handle it, okay, open it up. Do we have that in your policies now?
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, there's a council referral to look at the lemur management program, and that's coming forth in Q1 2025. What can I say? What I can say further is that what in our engagement, the nonprofit operators have a wait list of their own, and they're usually catering to certain housing needs based on their operations. But we have engaged those operators, and the results of that engagement will be coming forward in Q1 2025.
I guess my question, I'm not sure, sir, we're going in the right direction, to be quite frank with you. I will support anything we can do to get housing, and obviously we've got, what now, 10 people in the department?
8 currently, and then 2 more in 2025.
And the individual planners are not working on it and applying our stuff upstairs when a rezoning comes along, et cetera.
Yes, we work with the DevOps team to make sure, we're engaged in those processes.
Well, you're really not answering my question, but that's okay.
Or what?
I get the gist.
No.
No, I want to
He
know
hasn't
if the
answered one
planner says
question.
to a developer, you're coming into Spires Road, we want 15% lemur. If you don't want lemur, or you don't want to do the 15%, we're not going to take it to council.
They said the policies are unchanged. Josh? John?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, there is no change in the council's policies, as Mr. Russell did mention. When we meet with developers, we do go through a thorough policy review of the application, ensuring that they comply with all of the city's policies.
You have to remember, every developer talks to 9 people on council, so we do know what's going on. Thank you.
I just want to get the conversation back to whether we should have a housing authority or whatever you want to call it. That's the question here, not a general review. You can do that in your planning committee, but we're not having a general review right now of all our policies in relation to housing. So we'll go to Councillor Galanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for this. We did this referral on October 7th to come back with a report on the different avenues we could go and the appropriateness of the Housing Authority idea for Richmond, and I think that you've really covered it. I just want to ask a few questions. So on GP 78, where it goes over the funding differences, the different types of grants that are available and whatnot. On the second section of the table, access to grants. So direct access to grants in the in-house department, and then it lists on the Housing Authority side, direct access to federal and provincial capital grants. Can you explain the difference between the capital grants that there be direct access to for Housing Authority versus the ones that are available for in-house?
Through the chair to Councilor McGlander, or through the chair to Councilor Glanders.
It's a mouthful.
Well, the intention of, or by saying indirect access to capital grants, we're working with partners. So in the case of the Pathways site, we provided DCC waiver and other funding, and through that, and the land, of course, which is key. But that project is executed by BC Housing with their operators. So we're not accessing the capital grant directly, but we're supporting the project very directly. So that's why it's labeled as indirect.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, there's funding either way, and it doesn't seem like having the Housing Authority gets specifically different funds than the in-house.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And establishing a Housing Authority to take things to the next level with different types of projects doesn't take away from any of the work that the Housing Office is currently doing and is going to have to continue to do to manage all the LEMUR from the inclusionary policies and all the units that are coming online from that, right? They could go side to side.
That's
side by
correct.
Side, yeah, okay. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the housing needs report and looking at the grim state of our vacancy, like 0.2% is our rental vacancy, and a healthy low end of vacancy for rentals, 3%. That we've got 1,556 households in Richmond on the wait list for BC Housing. It's just showing me that I would like to move forward with a housing authority. I'm not sure about whether it should be a corporation or a society. I thought that part of the report was really interesting. I'd like to do a referral that we move forward with the housing authority and come back, if you could come back within 3 months, I don't know, on what steps we would need to take to set it up as a society and what steps we would need to set it up as a corporation and the benefits to either. The other part of the October 7th referral was in part of the secondary materials that were submitted with that referral was to do some consultation with stakeholders, nonprofits, et cetera. So I think that should come back as well. And like for me, the main reason why we need to do this is because we've maintained this LEMUR as our main method of delivering affordable housing. But what I'm hearing from the development community is that it's a lot of issues with LEMUR, with the nonprofits running these, that they're not sustainable. We've made the recent changes to the rental rates for those, which should help a little bit, but I'm just worried about the longevity of it. I think that with our own authority that we're going to be able to provide a lot more and stable long-term affordable housing. So I would like to move forward with that. I'd like to hear what other councillors have to say, but I have a referral motion I can hand out or read out after.
If we went to a housing authority, what would become of the housing office in the city? Would that be folded into it?
Through the chair, sorry. Not necessarily. There's a few models. Staff could be the housing authority, or you could have the housing authority with staff. So you can have both options. And, from a policy point of view, there'll probably be, I'm making assumptions here, but I think the housing policy component would likely be a city's role.
But as you reflected on page GP 78, if you have a housing authority, you're going to then have a board of directors. So whoever is involved is going to be responsible. It's going to be the responsibility of that board of directors, as opposed to city council, to set policy, to set parameters, to have overall, control of it.
The role of policy would stay with the city. The entity would be for providing housing. So it would be, appropriate that the city retain policy components.
Well, how do you do that if you've got a corporation? I mean, people complain about the Oval and say they want to bring it into the city because, there's this lack of control. There's this board that reports, that is responsible for it. Isn't it going to be the same for a housing authority?
Just a follow-up on.
No, it isn't past tense. It still is a corporation, and it still has a board of directors that sets what's going on. No. Listen, I'm not getting into a debate with you. Well, then put up your hand and say what you want.
Mayor, some of the other places, Squamish and Burnaby and Whistler, they've set it up that council.
Councillor, if you want to have comments, you finish your comments, get your hand back up, and you can make them in due course, okay? Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for this information. So the way we've currently been doing things is we use the not-for-profits to manage the system. And through that, as you mentioned, each not-for-profit sort of has their bailiwick of what they look after in terms of, you know, the different needs of the different groups. And so they are able to have the wraparound services for the individuals that they're helping to house. And in some cases, that helps ensure that those people stay housed, because part of the problem that we see is people who were formerly housed and lost their housing for various reasons. They're extremely hard to house, and they don't necessarily fit into any of these things. And if we were a housing authority, those same people wouldn't even necessarily fit into that model either, because maybe they truly need to be in a more hospital setting, something different. They need something different that's actually not in our terms of in what we're trying to do if we were a housing authority. I see where we're going with this is that we want fairness, so that there's sort of one list, one place for people to come in. But I think part of the challenge is we still need somewhere for these hard-to-house people, for them to have actually somewhere to go. And that's a provincial thing that needs a partnership. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. For BC Housing, supportive housing sites, a good example of those wraparound services. But you are also correct that the nonprofits cater to certain needs on occasion. So I wouldn't say it's a general condition, but there are certainly operators that partner with builders who are catering to a certain need.
Yeah, and certainly I had a conversation with Richmond Center for Disability. They didn't have the capacity, but you know, if they could be one of those housing provider groups that they could work specifically with a developer, because they better understand the needs of the diverse people with different disabilities. You know, someone in a wheelchair doesn't have the same needs as a blind person, for example, when you build out a space. Things like that. So your needs are very different for what you're trying to produce, and then you can build it accordingly, save more money, and be more efficient. If we got in the business of it, then would we still have all those not-for-profits sort of taking pieces away from it, or would we just manage the whole thing?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, we'd have both options. So we could partner with the nonprofit sector, or that service could be taken on by the city.
Okay, and then, like, I know there's people who don't really fall in because there's small organizations, say like Touchstone, who's got kids aging out of care, that while they have all their various different supports, people supporting them, they don't fall onto a list anywhere. And so I think a lot of what we're looking for is that list. Now, if we are the housing authority, my understanding is BC Housing has a different step code than we do. So somebody's got to make up that difference. So if we become the housing authority, then are our taxpayers on the hook essentially? Are we on the hook for the difference? And the same thing if, you know, we're talking about increasing costs, how we've had to make some changes for other developers. Do we either end up making those changes, or are our own taxpayers on the hook to make up the difference?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. I think there would be risk with the city doing it or with the housing authority. The current condition is that that risk is transferred to the private sector and the nonprofit sector. So the city facilitates those developments to occur. We support BC Housing in the delivery of their projects in Richmond. But yeah, there would be more risk if with a housing authority, because the assumption would be that there's support coming from the city. So in a partnering agreement, as noted in the report, you would identify what are the needs of the company and what assistance would the city provide to the company. So the Burnaby example shows $100 million in financing assistance. So those areas would be, I suppose, areas of risk that we're not assuming today that would be borne through the housing corporation.
Okay, and if we did a housing corporation, do we run the risk of projects like that big redevelopment over by the Rosewood Manor, all those ones, of the province sort of looking at us saying, well, you're your own housing authority, why don't we let you take it over? And like I said, if there's not enough funding involved with it, suddenly this whole Pandora's box that we don't necessarily want to open up and take on as a city.
The reference to Rosewood is, this is a unique project because it is BC Housing owned, so we wouldn't be implicated other than approvals otherwise. But yeah, that's all I could offer.
Okay, but my worry is that we might have further risks with other projects because now we've got a housing authority, so now they just throw it on us and let us deal with it instead of go around and keep looking after existing projects, co-ops that are already doing their own thing. Suddenly they're looking to us to take it over and redevelop it or fix their problems or whatever the situation is.
Okay, Councillor Day.
That's a lot to follow. From what I've read in the report, the other housing authorities have actually made incredible strides. And on page 76, you state, when talking about the establishing a housing authority, that such corporations typically take on the role of designing, building, financing, maintaining, operating, and or tenanting affordable housing developments directly or through a partnership. Does the current system that we have with the housing office do all of that?
No, it would not be doing these activities.
Okay.
But there would be supports, I would say, for half of these, for sure.
Yeah, what I think would be prudent, because we have a desperate situation with such low vacancy rate, that if we had an actual corporation or board that is actively going out and searching out developers and properties and making it happen, that's going to benefit a lot of people. I had a question about the Burnaby Housing. In your page 78, you state that they had access to 100 million in financing. But in the Vancouver Sun last August 17th of 2023, it says that Burnaby is cash rich with 120 million in its affordable housing reserve. So did they have both?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I'd have to check both. We have a housing reserve as well, affordable housing reserve. It's not not as much funding in it, but we do have the report notes a few areas in which our housing reserve was supporting different projects.
So what is in our Richmond Housing Reserve Fund for affordable housing?
Currently, it's noted. I believe it's noted on.
Jerry, do you know that?
I believe it's 2.1 million, but there's allocations, I just can't find that information in the report whereby, oh, here it is. We receive cash in lieu, which goes to the housing reserve. So on page 81, the second last paragraph.
Yep.
So 6.3 million is currently allocated to the Pathways project and the Steveston site. And current balance, I believe, is 2.1 million.
Okay, so we're far less than the 120 million that Burnaby has. We'll have to work on that. So when it comes to the running, I just looked up Lemur while we were sitting here waiting for my chance to speak. And if you go on the city website to check into Lemur Rentals, you've got a couple of properties that are run by the Ani Group. And we all know what the relationship we've had with Ani over the years. There's also a number of real estate service companies and Oris Consulting and whatnot that you would contact if you were looking to get into a Lemur in Richmond. If we had a housing authority, would they be overseeing all of that and making sure that things are done properly and we're not leaving it to a real estate agent?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, that would be the role of a registry versus the role of the corporation.
Don't we have a referral out to have you
Correct.
take a look at that?
Yeah, in Q1, we intend to bring a report forward.
Because I think we need to fix that. I don't think real estate agents should be assigning low-end market rentals to people. I would vote for a housing authority. I think that it's logical, given we have so much property, and staff are already run off your feet. And if we have a dedicated board that's going to be working with developers, looking at getting properties, looking for funding opportunities, working with the provincial government and the federal government, I believe that's exactly what we need to get past this hurdle that we're facing right now. So, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would just add that those are the service levels at the housing office.
Yeah.
Everything you described that's what we do. We look for the funding, and that's how those projects get paid. We work very closely as a city with BC Housing and others to get those projects built.
But do you actively design and build and, what was it you said in your own, here we go. Design, build, finance, maintain, and operating. You don't do all of that with the housing office. You would need a housing authority to do a full service.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Al.
Yes, I'm in favor of having a housing authority for the reason that the model that we are using right now, we have the dependent on the developers to build because we don't build directly. So I think if we have a independent body like the housing authority, I think they can develop different types of strategies to get units built. Because right now we might have a number of affordable units on paper, but they're in waiting. And in financial difficult times, the developers are not building. So they're not just numbers. But this is exactly the time that we need more affordable housing. And I can assume that, in many cases, the housing authority can step in at these difficult times and do it. So I'm interested in further study or analysis of the Burnaby Housing Authority model. So perhaps, I think the next step is, we use that as a sample and ask staff to get further into the analysis and come back to us and see, what we can do. And I think with our own housing authority, we can develop a local waiting list much easier than, we're relying on BC Housing right now, that people are being lumped together and they are not even on a wait list. So I'm in favor of having our own authority based on the Burnaby model, and perhaps, the next step is to get further information.
I hope when you're talking about the Burnaby model, you'll remember that they gave them $100 million. Yes. Burnaby has traditionally been the most wealthy community in the whole province, $2 billion in reserves. So please bear that in mind.
Of course.
Councillor Glanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. And yeah, I appreciate those comments about the funding being different in the different communities, and I appreciate the comments from Councillor Au. I agree with those next steps. And I just have one more question and another comment. On GP 81, on the last paragraph, it says, while not directly involved with the city, there's 989 units across 17 different cooperative housing buildings, so co-ops offering varying levels of affordable home ownership. And a forthcoming report will seek council endorsement for a partnership program with the NPOs and co-ops. I'm just, how would that tie in with anything that we were doing with the authority? That's completely separate. And if we're moving forward to establishing the next steps for an authority, does it have any effect on other types of projects like this?
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders, no, it wouldn't. This project in particular referring to is the a project funded by the Housing Accelerator Fund. It was part of our application. And the intention is to work with the nonprofit sector and actually start to engage the co-op sector, because they haven't traditionally been engaged to support the delivery of more housing. Okay.
And then I noticed what I was just trying to say before when we were talking about the board of directors, how I would see it being different from the Oval is what the other municipalities are doing is 3 or 4 city councillors are on the board and senior staff, and then some members of the public. And I know that we've got so many talented developers and professionals in our community that want us to overhaul this affordable housing strategy, that I'm sure we would have really great people stepping up to be part of that board. So my referral motion would be to direct staff to take next steps to establishing a housing authority, which could design, build, finance, maintain, operate, and/or tenant affordable housing developments directly or through partnerships in Richmond. Bring options and next steps for either a corporation or a society, because I think it's worth looking at both and the costs and implications of either, and then we get to decide how we want to proceed when they come back. And also consult with stakeholders, just to get some opinions on it and bring it back.
May I suggest this? Because I've been hearing the various opinions around the table. First of all, that we receive the report as number one. Number two, that we direct staff to consider further the setting up of a housing authority and come back with terms of reference for it, situations in, I'm not wording this in a sophisticated manner, but the idea is when to use the housing authority, what types of projects would be appropriate for it, and the structure, including the legal structure of it. Society, corporation, or something else. Okay?
I just think we need to be a little bit more specific in that we're taking the next steps to come back with how it's going to be, and not because I thought what you just worded is kind of similar to what we just had.
No, it's not meant to be. It's meant to be a direction to come back to us with how staff would see the terms of reference for this housing authority, how it'd be structured, when it would be used, that sort of thing.
For staff to come back with the terms of reference and the structure recommendations for our housing authority.
And when it would be used.
And when it would be used.
Okay, so that's the motion you're making?
Okay.
So that's moved and seconded. Councilor Ford, Councilor Heed.
Thank you, Mayor. So just so we are clear, part of this motion is that we've made the decision to go with a housing authority.
Well, we'll make that, we're going to see what they have in mind.
No, we've been debating this for 2 years. Are we making the decision? Are we wasting everyone's time? Are we making a decision to go with a housing authority, and then it's going to go back to staff to determine how we're going to do it?
They're going to determine exactly what and how we're going to do it.
So have we made the decision to go with the housing authority?
If they come back with something we don't like, then we're going to say we don't like it.
We get paid to make decisions at this table. And now we're sending this back again. 2 years we've been sending this back.
No, we're not. We're sending it back for them to actually come through with the actual structure. What they've dealt with to this point in this report is, should we be doing it? And what we're saying is, we want to see the structure, what you've got in mind, when we would use it, how it would be set up, et cetera, et cetera.
So we haven't decided.
Well, if we like what we see, we've decided.
Thank you.
Councilor McNulty.
Yeah, similarly along that line, obviously, I think Laura's resolution says we are going to go ahead, and I'd like to see what that looks like. But more, also, I'd like to know what, they're quite a bit different. What will be the impact in the development community? Okay, will there be an impact? I don't know, okay?
That's what the consultation piece.
But what is the impact out there in the development community? And how will it get us more units? Okay, we haven't hit that. It's not in there at all.
Okay.
And we're looking at a structure. Yeah, we can look all day on a structure, but we need to be going ahead in one way or the other. And what is the impact out there? Maybe everybody will walk out of Richmond not developed. And we've got a nice housing authority, so I think we have to look at the overall impact, the fact that we would have one, and how does it engage everybody, and where does it go, and what do we need in terms of capacity to make it successful. And let's forget what Burnaby did, whatever. Let's create our own, whatever is our needs, as opposed to, yes, Burnaby has extraneous advantages and we don't. So where do we go? And that's not in other resolutions, so.
I'll go back to Councillor Glanders because based on those comments, my suggestion is that we add consultation with stakeholders as part of that referral.
I agree, and I think I could sum it up, because I did have consultation with stakeholder in mind, but direct staff to take next steps in establishing a housing authority, including coming back with structure options, society versus corporation, terms of reference, and public and consultation results.
Say those points again, after directing da-da-da.
Directing staff to take next steps in establishing a housing authority, including options for structure, i.e. a society versus a corporation.
Just structure.
Structure, terms of reference, and results of consultation.
No, when to use it,
When to use it,
and a consultation with stakeholders.
and consultation with
As
stakeholders.
to implications for the stakeholders.
As to implications for the
Or
stakeholders.
as to implications, period.
Yes, agreed.
All right, so that's better wording. That's fine. So we'll take it that that is the wording. Councillor McNulty, what?
The timeline,
Oh, come back within 3 months?
3 months?
3 months.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, yeah, Councillor Al.
One more thing, the financing model. Because you mentioned that Burnaby got the money, we don't, so I think.
I could fit into structure.
Well, just let's add it as a
Okay.
separate bullet, financing model.
Structure, financing model, terms of reference,
Yeah.
and consultation implications.
Councillor Day, on the motion.
Yeah, I just want to ask a question regarding the motion. On page 80, staff make it very clear that a housing authority could have merit if council objectives are to design, build, finance, and operate affordable housing projects directly or through partnership. Is that motion going to include that level of involvement? Because what I don't want to see is we're just a rental agency. I want to see this housing organization actually actively go out and be a leader in the community and bring the partners together and get it happening. Because it's not good enough to just wait for someone to knock on the door and say, well, I'm building a unit. Hey, what can we do? We have to be out there.
I think it's a fair point. I think that'll be in the terms of reference.
Okay, so we're clear on that, that's for sure. Okay, all right.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thanks, Peter. Now, major projects oversight. Response to the referral by Martin Yaunis. Thoughts?
To the chair, I have nothing to add, but happy to
Okay,
answer
so
questions.
again, to summarize your report as I understand it, you're saying, let's see now, you focused on the two projects, that's $50 million. And there's two projects. One is Stevenson Community Center, which is coming out of the ground.
That is correct, Chair.
In quite a different category is the works yard.
That is correct, Chair.
All right. So, are you recommending anything particular, or are you just wanting us to tell you what we think?
To the chair and to committee, we have provided what mechanisms are in place for oversight for capital projects for all of this time, and we have listed various options for any oversight committee, if that is council's desire. We already have established quality management and assurance and financial management processes and legal processes that we follow during this time. And as mentioned in the report, we have delivered over $500 million worth of projects in the last 10 years without any of them going over budget. But we welcome any committee that council should decide to appoint.
Okay, all right, so I'm not seeing any speakers. Okay, I do now see speakers. Councillor Heed.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I need to make a few comments with respect to this because I think we've got two process-driven versus outcome-based on where we need to go. When I brought this matter forward in June of this year, I had a few other things in mind, and Mayor, you'll recall that we had a discussion and we decided to make it a referral versus just a direct motion. I'm still of the opinion that we need a very high-level accountability process within our projects in excess of $50 million of taxpayers' money, all be said here. I think given the environment we're in right now, whether it's Metro Vancouver on the wastewater treatment problems we have, whether it's the provincial government on building the Dees Crossing, the hospital in Richmond, or Site C Dam, or, it's endless, the number of projects where they're gone significantly over what it was estimated to cost. And when I look at this, and your report, you certainly identify some key areas which we have the accountability in place. I think we're complicating what the intent was originally, in my opinion, on this Blue Ribbon Oversight Committee, where it'd be a very, very high level. We're talking about people that have run massive projects here in the province of British Columbia that would be part of the Oversight Committee. We're talking up to, I believe I said 5 individuals we'd be looking for. We'd be looking at them to be highly experienced with a diverse expertise in infrastructure, project management, including oversight of large-scale construction undertakings, extensive development, comprehension, financial proficiency, quantity survey familiarity, and comprehensive knowledge of complexities that are involved. And as with your background, and I learned a bit about your background, is you can understand where we're going on this. The accountability is the number one goal here. And if we can have this added layer, and it's not a complicated bureaucratic type process. It is something that we can do in-house, that we can do with our staff, working with these qualified individuals at a very high level that are retired, but have an element of expertise you are not going to get anywhere else in order to say, hey, that works yard, it's fine, it's running fine, or hey, look, you may want to start to look at this. To give you a bit of an update, to give you what they've gone through over their, copious years of dealing with these particular things. So I'm certainly supportive of that. I will most likely, Mayor, given the debate that's going to take place here at this table and the comments from fellow councillors, may make a motion with respect to where we're going on this. The terms of reference, I believe, if in fact we're going in that direction, have to be adjusted so it doesn't become a bureaucratic nightmare. It's just an advisory committee for our team here in Richmond, whether it's council or whether it's your group of people on this. Remember, I'm not talking about every single project. I'm talking about $50 million and above of taxpayers' money. This is a very, very low cost. You were just going to pay them, a rate similar to what people get at ECOM or Metro Vancouver or something like that, meeting quarterly. This is not a very expensive initiative, but it delivers such an incredible accountability factor to Richmond for the taxpayer money. We're just talking about Richmond taxpayers' money.
Okay, just before we go to Councillor Day, we need to keep in mind that an oversight committee is not a panacea. As the North Shore wastewater treatment plant went from a budget of less than $1 billion to $4 billion, there was about a 6 or 8 person expert panel that was totally involved in that. We haven't heard from them or about them, but that is the situation. From my point of view, it seems, I think it's justified for the works yard. I think that's a unique project. I think it's big dollars. I think there's going to be some difficult opportunities there, such as the fact that it's going to have to be built with people actively working there. Plus, it's got to incorporate the efficiencies that we're looking for and be, state-of-the-art in many ways. So I think that there's a role for this kind of an oversight committee on that. I think that there is, for the big projects, there is a role for it. My suggestion would be is that we ask staff to draft terms of reference for an oversight committee, or the options for oversight committee, the actual terms of reference for the works yard, that we set a policy that for future projects that are with a cost of over 50 million and over, that we that we form an oversight committee and develop the terms of reference that are unique to that project. But the one thing I don't think, I think that an oversight committee for the Stevenson Community Center, I mean, it's not coming out of the ground. It's been designed, I mean, it's baked in. I'm not sure that I think that, and you haven't told us about any overriding disasters that are happening there.
To the chair, we have already awarded the Stevenson Community Center, and the risk lies with the contractors.
So I'm not sure that I think that that is justified, although in the past we've used stakeholder committees and that sort of thing. But that's where I think it should go, is put it in place for the works yard and put it in place to be defined every time we have such a big project. Councillor Day.
Thank you. As counselors, we don't have to be experts on everything, but we should be willing and able to ask experts who are experts in their field. And when it comes to the works yard, that's a no-brainer. We're going to need an oversight committee for that. But I don't think it would do any harm to have the same committee available for the Steveston Community Center, because it's a $94 million project. And if it's somewhere along the line, one of these experts catches something and saves us from the nightmare, for example, of MCAL. When we were building that swimming pool, it was a logistical nightmare, and we had to fire the people who were working on it and hire new people, and I don't want to go through that ever again. And so if another set of eyes or a group of eyes can prevent that from happening, I say we go for it. And we repeatedly have staff come back and ask for more money for things like the bowling green, animal shelter, or the pool. And if we can avoid having staff to come back again and again to basically up the ante on various projects, I think that we should. And when it comes to having retired experts who have a lifetime of experience telling us, hey, before you go any further, you might want to change that. I'll tell you, when my dad was a welder and in charge of huge jobs downtown, the courthouse and whatnot, he would have designers come up to him and say, oh, we're going to do blah, blah, blah. And he goes, yeah, it won't work. He was just a simple welder, but he knew what he was talking about. And time again, those so-called managers would come back to him and say, Mr. Nissen, can you help us with this one? So why not take the expertise of these experts and go with it? I think it's going to make us all feel better and sleep better at night.
Councillor Wolf.
Yeah, thank you. I was originally 6 years ago appointed to one of the advisory committees that was called larger major project advisory committee. It never met. Stevenson got approved and never met. So I'm not sure where that fell out, instructing that group to oversee, but I have seen no experience of it. Second comment is I do support it going for the works yard for sure, going ahead as is outlined in the referral. I do not feel the value of it to have oversight over Steveston. I think that's definitely far enough along that we haven't heard of cost overruns or major issues, and I think the plan for that is going ahead as expected. But I agree with the works yard and potential soil contamination, other factors that can come up still. I think there's definitely some need to have some deeper thinking minds who have experienced things like this to be part of the process. My only question to staff is in the financial impact section on page 110, it's outlined that you consulted with 2 groups, and the hourly rate for senior level professional service ranges from $240 to $450 per hour. So my question is, are you certain that that's the only type of financial impact, or could it be that the appointed members could just receive a set rate per 4-hour meeting? And I don't know if you pointed that out to these organizations, that might be an option.
Through the chair to Councilor Wolf, we took a scan about the professionals that we recommended in the terms of reference, the architects or the quantitative surveyors, the technical kind of staff. And these are the rates that are published by ACEC and AIBC. So we use that as a measure. Council can decide, of course, to compensate the members as they see fit.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for this report. I appreciate this, and I think that this is going to be a good start. If we do this, especially with the Public Works Yard, it'll really give us a good grounding on how this process works, how it can support what we're building, because we have a much bigger project coming down the pipe, the Steveston Seagate, that's going to be even more complicated. And I think this really, it'll set the tone. It'll help council be able to work with these specialists, staff able to work with specialists, figure out what's really going to make the projects be the best they can, because I have a lot of worry about the Steveston Seagate project. Not the Public Works, but the Seagate project. I know that's a big, complicated one. It's something different. It's not a typical one. We're dealing with a lot of other things, and I think setting up this process now and practicing, if you will, almost with the Public Works Yard is really going to serve us well.
Councillor Hobbs, from some faraway place, you're online. Go ahead.
Thank you, and you can hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, thanks, and through the chair. First of all, thanks for the report from staff. I do agree with some of the general comments made around the table about accountability and transparency, and in fact, there's only one taxpayer and that kind of thing. I would like to just point out that it's important that we know what problem it is that we're trying to solve. And I think staff has mentioned, and I think it's important to reiterate that our projects have come in for years on time and on schedule, so that's important. Having said that, a lot of the major projects that we've heard about around the province have had a lot of experts working on them, and that has not guaranteed them being on budget and on time either. But having said that as well, I do agree with the other comments. I think the Works Yard is unique enough for Richmond that this type of committee would be a good thing. And so I would support it for the Works Yard. I think the Steveston Community Center, I think that cake is more or less baked, so I don't think it's necessary for that. The one question I have, and just to emphasize and ensure I've got it straight in my mind, this committee, if it were struck for the Works Yard project, would not be a standing committee going beyond the project. It would be a committee that's struck for that particular project. And when we have other large projects that fit the criteria, like the Seagate, then we'd strike another committee with different experts and people that are available. Is that a fair comment?
That we will have to define in the resolution that is yet to come. From my point of view, that's the way to go, is to have one for the Works Yard and then consider one for every single, have a policy that will have one for every large project after that. But
yeah, that would make sense to me. Okay. Thank you.
All right, and just based on those comments, if you talk about the Seagate, you're going to need different criteria and different people probably than if you're talking about the Works Yard or a community center or something. So my suggestion only a suggestion is, number one, we receive it for information. Number two, that we direct staff to develop terms of reference for an oversight committee for the Works Yard project. And thirdly, that we direct staff to develop a policy that for every project with a capital cost of $50 million and over, that an oversight committee be considered at the outset of the project. Okay? Comments? Councillor Heat.
Yes, I'm almost there with you on that. The problem I have is we're not going to have many of these things. I agree with you. Hopefully, we don't have many of these very costly projects for the taxpayers here in Richmond. But why would we now just take, you're talking about these people like the ones that I consulted. He started one of the largest construction companies in BC, and he wants to give back to this. Why would we just limit it per project? Why wouldn't we just say, okay, here's our Blue Ribbon Oversight Committee. You're going to determine the terms of reference, hopefully, and we can come to an agreement on this. We're not going to create a big bureaucracy here. You're here, and if you want to not go with Stevenson, just go with $100 million so far in the Works Yard project, but you're our Blue Ribbon Oversight Committee for projects here in Richmond in excess of $50 million, starting with the Works Yard. Let's see where it goes from there. These people aren't going to be around forever, neither are we. But let's just see what happens here. Instead of just, because my understanding with MCAL is you had a committee looking at that, and there were problems with it. Mayor, I'm talking about a very high level, and you're going to know a lot of these people too, Mayor, and you're going to agree. You can't believe that they'd want to do it for the little allowance that they're going to get quarterly, if it's that at the end of the day. So that's my only issue here, is having it more or less a standing committee versus project-based at this point.
In response to that, the requirements that you may have, I mean, a building isn't a building. I mean, look at the Stevenson Community Center. You'd probably want different people on that than you'd want on the Works Yard. So, or maybe you want the same ones. No, we're not having a conversation. You can put your hand back up. Okay. You can, so you may want the same people, and you may not want the same people. Why assume that you're going to have the same people? Because I think that they're going to be quite different. Mostly, certainly they'll be different than the Works Yard. You know, if you're building a library, it's probably going to be similar to a community center or something. Secondly, I want to make it very clear and refresh your memories on the Minaroo Center for Active Living. We did have some kind of a committee that we were victimized by design flaws and by operational flaws that caused one of the swimming tanks to crack. And that led us into something different. I can tell you, no matter what kind of an oversight committee you had or could have, you're not going to be, you know, straight incompetence by the contractor is not going to be saved by your oversight committee. It just won't happen. So I want to put that one in context right now. Councillor Glanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, fair comments from everybody. With regards to, you know, the high level that we're looking at that Councillor Heat's referring to, I think he makes a fair point that once that committee is established, that why would we not just keep them on rather than doing it over and over and over again? Well, it's only going to be once in a while, but my question would be, if they're not overseeing if we established a Blue Ribbon Committee, as Councillor Heed is referencing with these people that he has in mind, to oversee the works yard, and then that's our committee. And then once the work yard oversight is finished, would they continue to meet quarterly, or would they just go on pause until the next thing? And then we say, well, now we're doing another project, let's contact our Blue Ribbon Committee, tell them to start up again, and see maybe there's not everybody on it that was on it before, some people have moved on or whatever, and we could fill in the spots as needed. How different is that from what you're suggesting,
Well,
Mayor?
First of all, I'm not using the words blue ribbon. I think that has a connotation.
Advisory committee. Okay.
Advisory, oversight.
Oversight.
All those kind of words. But secondly, the work yard is a 10-year project. Those guys are going to be around.
They'll be busy for 10 years.
And so we have a library or some other project, swimming pool project, a community center, they're going to build the community center at the north one of these years. We can decide to ask those people to do it, or we can say someone else, just depending on the circumstances, who it is and what they're doing.
Okay.
So don't define it that it has to be the same people. And as you say, sometimes they're not going to have much to meet about. Just define it as you go along. But the policy is in place. You will have such a committee.
So
Councillor
it
Heed.
could be the same or could not be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Councillor Heed.
Thank you, Mayor, and not to debate the issue directly with you, but just to make my comments again.
Fine.
We're talking about individuals that have a broad amount of expertise in the area. We're talking about, and the people that I've spoken to, built massive highway projects, massive buildings. It's endless, the different types of projects. We're looking for people that have that management, oversight of large-scale construction undertakings, regardless of what it is, that they're have financial proficiencies because they've started massive construction companies here in the province of British Columbia and elsewhere in Canada. Quantity survey familiarity, which I understand, and I'm not big on construction, is such a quality that is needed in this. We're talking about people with financial expertise like actuaries, so we can start to predict what future costs, whether it's construction or labor costs, are going to be. Those are the types of individuals that we would have available, hopefully, for these committees. And they don't come by easily, to be right up front. So I'm still of the issue that let's just make it a standing committee for now for projects, starting with the works yard and 50 million plus going forward in Richmond.
All right. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I think it's a great idea. I mean, we've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. Currently, we have professional cost estimators, third-party design experts, construction managers, permit to practice, comprehensive financial tracking, active projects come back with a financial update 3 times in a year, and then the year end. And even with all that, we do from time to time run into trouble. So I think it's a really solid idea to have people that are experts in the industry. And should they want to change in and out, because maybe there is a project that comes along that they don't feel that they can contribute to, but make it a standing committee, have it evolve as it needs to, as people's availability is. And, I have to say, since we got the new Oval Board, we've seen some incredible improvements. And I think it's always good to have extra experts on our side to support us through these massive decisions.
Just remember, well, I'll ask this as a question. All those consultants to make sure you're on track, quantity surveyors, et cetera, you're still going to have them, right?
Yes, through the chair.
This doesn't replace those people.
No, it does not. Not at all. We cannot replace those.
Councillor Al.
Your Worship, I think you raised a very good point, right? The workshop would take place for about 10 years. So if we make this advisory committee into standing committee, they have to be subject to the terms of the policies, right? That we have 2-year limit, 4-year limits for the members. So do you want to have a change of those members, in these 10 years? So
You
this, I
better
think,
consider that in your terms of reference,
Understood, Mayor.
term limits. Yeah, it's a valid point. All right, so what's on the table is to receive, to have a direct staff for terms of reference for an oversight committee for the work yard, and a policy that we will have an oversight committee to develop terms of reference for a oversight committee for all future large projects. That's what's on the table. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried. Okay, I think that does it. Motion to adjourn. All right, so, well, as we start up the closed meeting, another motion to allow Councillor Hobbs to join us. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. And a motion on closure compliance